Hello and welcome to Diary of an Unschooler, the space where we explore the world of deschooling, unschooling, and natural learning. I'm your host, Leah McDermott, and I'm here to guide you through the fascinating journey of alternative education and meaningful learning experiences with your children. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us once again, or if you're new here, a warm welcome to you. Let's dive into today's topic. Hey everyone, it's Leah here. Today I want to respond to a Facebook post that I saw on a Facebook parenting group about the timeline of healing from educational trauma. I think it's really, really important that we have these discussions about what our expectations are in the realm of deschooling when we step into this world of alternative learning, healing from public school trauma, from educational trauma. It's really important that we understand what that timeline is and what comes next, because this is something that I see and hear from parents all of the time in the work that I do as I welcome new families into Bridge Academy, as we communicate on social media. But this post worded it so specifically that I want to use it as a way to teach here. So without reading this post to you, essentially what this post said was, it was a mom sharing that she had a 13-year-old son that had a very traumatic experience in public school. There were no details, but just that it was a traumatic experience for him, and that she had pulled him out last year and said, quote, "We've finished deschooling. Now, how do we get back to normal?" So the implication here was, she set a deadline. I gave him a year or however long it was. We're done now. And now I don't know what to do next. How do I get him back to normal, meaning engaging in schoolwork the way it would look in a public school? And so this, again, is a really big common thing. I still see a lot of misunderstanding about what deschooling is. I think still now, if you Google deschooling, you will get advice saying very specific timelines. One I see pretty often is 1 month of quote unquote deschooling for every year the child was in school. So if they were in school until 5th grade, that's 6 years of trauma, therefore 6 months of deschooling, and these very rigid timelines of what healing is supposed to look like. And I think what happens is we forget that deschooling is not a curriculum. It's not a step-by-step program. Deschooling means healing. It is a healing process of trauma, whatever that trauma looks like. And trauma does not have to be grotesque and fatal and physical to be trauma. It also can happen very quickly. I speak to parents all of the time who put their children in kindergarten for a month, and the trauma that ensued just from that experience took a very long time for the child to heal from, or, quote unquote, get back to normal. And so there's a couple of things that I want to address here. If this is something that you are dealing with or feeling in your own deschooling journey with your child, I want to hopefully give you some help and some hope about this. But I think even if you're not specifically dealing with a child who has educational trauma, I think it's very important that we understand what deschooling is, who it is for, because spoiler alert, it is not just for the child pulled out of public school, and what our goals and expectations should be in a deschooling experience. And please feel free to share this episode with anyone you know that is in the beginning stages of pulling their child from a traumatic schooling experience, because understanding this from the beginning is so immensely helpful. Okay, 2 things we're going to cover in this episode. Number 1, healing has no timeline. Deschooling is not, I'll say it again, it is not a program. It is not a curriculum. There is not one way to go through this experience. Everyone will go through it differently, and it will look and feel different for every child. When you have a trauma that has occurred, when you are carrying this trauma wound, in this case, we are talking about educational trauma, but this is the same as if it were any other type of trauma, a physical wound that we are healing, right? Everyone is going to heal differently from a physical wound, an emotional wound, an abuse wound, trauma of any kind. That healing is going to be unique to the person because that person is going to have a different experience. They're going to have they're going to have different triggers that are going to bring that trauma back to the surface. For a lot of children who are healing and deschooling from public school wounds, any activity, any situation, any conversation that even remotely looks like school can be extremely triggering for this child. And they shut down and have resistance, and it starts the process all over again. So as the parent who is helping them on this journey, it is very important that we understand that there is no timeline for healing. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years that your child is processing and healing and recovering from these experiences. And what's very important here is that you understand that they should not be on this journey alone. You should be on this journey, not just with them, helping them heal, but often we have to confront our own educational wounds and should confront our own educational wounds and the beliefs that we have allowed ourselves to attach to through acceptance of these wounds as a societal norm. And especially as parents that may have put our children into these situations without understanding first what might happen to them because we didn't have the opportunity to heal ourselves from those wounds that we carried. And then we accidentally perpetuated it. Now we have these added wounds of, I've done this to my child. I made these choices, right? There's so much healing that needs to happen here. It's not just for your child. It's also for you. This is a topic for another podcast episode for sure. If this is something you're dealing with and you want to hear more, let me know. We can do a whole episode or a series about this. But specifically for this episode, I need you to understand that healing has no timeline. And second, and with that, we are not trying to go back to normal. Feeling this way means that you need to deschool. If your goal is to get your child back to normal, then you are not on a deschooling journey. You are on a get them back to production normal. I don't even know what that would be, right? Because this is not something that we want. We don't want them to go back to normal. The goal is to step into a new version of living and learning together. So we need to ask ourselves questions like, what does learning really look like? And what does it mean to be a learner? How am I preparing my child for the future? How am I creating an experience and a routine and a journey for them that allows them to embrace the idea that learning happens all of the time and that we want them to be lifelong learners? This isn't just about getting back to a textbook. Get over it so you can go back to doing the same thing again. That's not the goal of deschooling. How are we helping our child to grow and progress in all areas of their life, not just the academic ones, but emotional growth, social growth, physical growth? All of these things are happening, mental growth. Academics are not the only thing we're focusing on here. When we are healing from a trauma that takes every ounce of who we are as a human, a child that is healing from educational trauma often needs to sleep more. Their bodies physically need to heal from emotional trauma that was caused by an educational wound. How are we looking at our whole child here and creating a healing experience for them? It's not about going back to normal. It's about changing our mindset completely so that we create a new normal, not just for our child and our family, but that we can do that for society as a whole so that no other children have to go through those traumas that were perpetuated by a public school system or a rigid traditional education system that forces us into this funnel where everyone looks exactly the same, learns exactly the same, and comes out on the other side exactly the same. That's not what the goal of life should be. It's certainly not the goal of deschooling. So if you find yourself on this journey, whether you chose it or not, whether it was chosen or thrust upon you, if you find yourself on this healing journey of deschooling for yourself and or with your child, please keep these things in mind. It's not about getting back to a normal of any kind. It is about creating a new life, a new outlook on living and learning, where we are embracing individuality, embracing creativity and problem solving and communicating and individualism. That is what helps us shine as humans in this world, especially as our world continues to change, where so many jobs are going to be automated. It is so important that we are raising our children to be unique individuals, to embrace their individuality. And that is a very hard thing to come out and do when we have been a part of this system that wants us to look exactly the same, that believes that learning and living is one size fits all. So hopefully you are on this journey now, that you are healing with your child, healing yourself, discovering these new ways of living and learning together. So remember, healing has no timeline. Embrace this journey together, and you will all be better for it, and the world will be better for it. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Diary of an Unschooler. I hope today's discussion provided valuable insights for you into the world of unschooling. Remember to subscribe and leave us a review if you found this episode helpful. I record multiple episodes on a variety of topics every week, so make sure to come back soon to dive into more about unschooling and natural learning. A big thank you to our team for making this episode possible. I'm Leah McDermott, reminding you to embrace the journey of learning naturally with your children. Until next time, take care, and remember, all life is learning.